I'm good. Did you miss me?
I did a lot. A lot.
I really don't want to get your channel deleted, Reed. That you're asking for serious trouble if I answer that question.
Well, then stop fucking talking about us, man.
How much perceived value do you think we will lose?
Well, I mean, we lose a lot.
The establishment Republicans are not Republican in name only. That's what the GOP is.
So many people want everyone else to come to libertarianism the same way they did.
But the slave mentality is praised.
All right, thanks,
I want
Mike.
your phone to blow up with notifications every time the show is on. Thank you, Reed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Naturalist Capitalist. I've got a pretty busy schedule the rest of the year, not for the show, but just in my life. So this is probably the last episode I'm going to do in 2021. And 2021 has been a ridiculous year for me. So I figured I'd have I don't know if I'd call him my ex-husband or my husband. We're just kind of estranged. We're trying to figure it out. But Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown is back on the show. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Yeah, I mean, I think current husband is fine. You don't need to put X in front of it. That's kind of sad.
I mean, we kind of have just an open relationship, but I feel like all of our relationships are rather polygamous. And I mean, it works for me because I live in Utah.
So I was going to say.
Although, I mean,
this is what your people do, so it's fine.
Although here, like, you still get executed for gay sex. You can just have 11 wives. So it's a little bit like that. That's why we never like really got, did the hanky panky around here. It was always out of state. So
that's weird because it's like, it's so advantageous to be a straight man in Utah and so disadvantageous to be a gay dude. Like, rough.
It's tough, dude. It's not easy. So
that's why we traveled across the country loving it.
Exactly. So that's a good place to kick it off. The traveling, you had like never been really anywhere other than California much before this year, right? And now you've been to how many states?
Oh no, I had been to quite a few states.
Oh, you had? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah. I had never done a cross country road trip like that though. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I hit a bunch of states I had never been to too, for sure. But I drove through probably 12 states or so, I think. I'd have to tally it up, but it was an amazing experience. I mean, it was probably the highlight of the year in terms of like expanding myself and expanding my horizons and getting to know people and meet you and a bunch of other people in real life that I had been, interacting with online for a while, but didn't know. And it's just an amazing experience to get to take people from the online realm and then meet them in person and be like, oh yeah, you are exactly what I had hoped, like and that's why basically everyone that I've met that I was kind of a friend with online, I meet them in real life and we become real friends. So it's a cool thing. And I feel bad for women because they probably can't do it as safely as I did. Or as recklessly as I did, I should say. I just was like, yeah, I'm going to go spend the night at Reed Coverdale, the creepy trucker's house. And I survived. So
at least it wasn't in my truck because not too many people survive that experience,
I would imagine. Rest in peace, MJ.
So you you quit your job in what, April of 2020? When was it?
I mean, I kind of quit it then. I did like a handful of loans throughout the remainder of the year, but for the most part, it was shut down. So I've been a full-time Liberty ranter for like a year and a half.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so in San Diego, like the summer of 2020, did you just like sit in your house because you couldn't do anything, or what was that like before 2021? Because I wasn't really following you until 2021, so I just like didn't even know what you did the entire year of 2020.
Well, I think the first month after lockdown, I just was prepping. I was like out buying all sorts of shit, food, weapons, ammo, everything. And then I was investing. So I was buying other things I won't talk about because I don't want people to know what I have. Right. So yeah, that's what I was doing for the first month. And then after that, I started my show. So there was really no, gap where I could just sit around and feel miserable. But I definitely dealt with severe anxiety during that period. I was like, I don't know what's happening. I mean, I think most people felt that way. I just am more attuned to it because I've had an anxiety disorder throughout my, late 20s to my 30s. And I was able to sense it right away. Like, oh, I hadn't had a panic attack in years. And all of a sudden the government's, locking me in my house and telling me that I can't do business essentially. And I was like, oh, this is that old familiar feeling. But what was fascinating is that instead of having the normal fight or flight response that concerns me, because my anxiety disorder prior to that would be meritless. It wouldn't be justified. And I would just be like, okay, focus on your breath. You can get through this, blah, blah, blah. This one, I was like, oh no, I should be panicked. Like there is merit behind this anxiety that I'm sensing. And that's what I flighted. I fought and I flighted. I fought verbally and I flighted physically. And I think a lot of people have done that. So many people have migrated from heavy blue states to either red or purple states. And I'm not alone in that. I went to Florida myself, and I don't think I'll go back, man. My family invited me for Christmas, and I was just like, I can't risk it. I can't risk that they make a vaccine mandate for flights, and it could happen at any time. It's crazy.
So what's the biggest thing you miss about California? Obviously, there's a lot that you don't miss, but is there anything that you're like, man, I really wish I still had that?
The thing I think about the most, besides friends and family, which is the hardest part for sure, is chips with cheese and guacamole. Like there's just nothing like it. San Diego Mexican food, the carne asada burrito, like the whole San Diego experience, like the food there is pretty solid. So I think whenever I go back, that'll be, besides the friends and family, that'll be the thing I look forward to most. And then my volleyball community is probably the hardest thing to replace. I had like 35, 40 people that I played with every weekend, or 2 times a week, I should say, for 7 or 8 years. So, they start to feel like family. So that's probably the hardest thing for me. But yeah, those are the things I miss. And then not paying income tax and everything else is pretty cool.
So isn't San Diego the most conservative coastal city in California?
I would say Orange County is more, but we're close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what areas? I love San Diego. Like I've been there a few times. What area generally did you live in?
I was in Carlsbad, which is a waterfront beach town, but it's in North County. So like you have downtown San Diego, you go about 40 miles north. So I was like right on the cusp of the northern tip of San Diego County. So Oceanside and Camp Pendleton were the only thing north of me before you start to like take this big gap to get to Orange County.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it sucks, man. California, I've been all 50 states, and California is probably my favorite one geographically. I mean,
it's amazing.
Everything. It's got all those national parks, the mountains, the ocean, the deserts.
Yeah. People always say like the most remarkable thing about it is that you can surf and snowboard in the same day. It's like, it's true. I don't know where else you can do that, maybe in the world. So yeah, it's a very special place. The climate is spectacular. It's like 70 degrees all year round. I miss it a lot, but I'm fortunate in that I had the resources to go to Miami, which is, I mean, the weather here has been spectacular too. So no complaints there. I just think the network and the community feeling, I don't have that here. Fortunately, so much of my life has been shifted to the online realm. I still feel like I have a community, which has probably taken some of the sting off of it. But at some point, I'm going to have to get out of my cave and start, making friends here too.
So what do you foresee the future being at this point? Do you think it's just going to be, is it just going to be the podcast, or are you going to like run for president eventually, or what's on the docket?
I think both of our background with Tower Gang probably kills that, but I could see myself
Dave
running
Smith
for.
will have to be like a test run. We'll have to see how he does. And if okay, well, all right, maybe we can do this.
Exactly. I think it's more likely that wherever I end up settling down permanently, which I don't think it'll be Miami, I could see myself running for local office just to try and create a little Liberty enclave, kind of the Hoppian idea, 10,000 Liechtenstein, all that jazz. So that's why I like the post-libertarian idea of doing that. So I might do that. I don't know. But I'm also looking seriously at writing a book. Like I really think that I have a lot to say. People obviously like my writing style in short form on Twitter. But I don't know, whether or not I can narrow down my scope, because I have a lot of interests and I don't know how I'm going to like exactly frame it. I obviously probably the thing I know best would be macroeconomic collapse scenarios and things of that nature, paired with the mortgage background that I have. I think that could be interesting. But also, with libertarian ideals and solutions therein. I don't know. I think that's an outlet that I could really consider exploring.
Yeah. So I'm sure it is, but is it incredible to you looking at your show in 2020 and then looking at it in 2021? Like, I've looked at the people I've talked to in 2021, and then I go back to 2020, and I was like talking to some dude I met on Twitter who had like 50 followers or something, and now it's
Exactly.
Peter Schiff and like all, I mean, it's just insane. But what's that been like for you?
Oh, I mean, it's surreal. It's totally surreal. The fact that I've had on the two of the three biggest guys that got me interested in podcasting in the first place, in Adam Curry and Dave Smith. Like, that's fucking nuts. And both of them are like now friends of mine and have said that they're willing to come on anytime I need them. Like, yeah, it's just the weirdest thing. Joe Rogan being the third, and I obviously am not at that level. So, but maybe one day we'll see. So yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre to have. I'm almost at, I think, 27,000 Twitter followers or something like that. I just broke 500,000 downloads on my shows at this point. It's like, it's mind blowing, man. I mean, it's probably the biggest uplifter I've had through this really trying period when it came to everything else going on in the world. So I'm very grateful for it, and I try and tell my audience that as often as humanly possible, that I am just I'm so thankful for them. And it's not because I get a little bit of income from my show. It's like, it's purely because I feel a community, and it's really meaningful to me. So yeah, I appreciate, and obviously I appreciate guys like you too. I mean, it's like, I feel like I've made brothers out of this thing. It's nutty.
Yeah. It's nice. I mean, I'm in the same boat that I do not financially depend on the show, which I think, unless you're doing really well with the money you make from the show, that would kind of suck, because then you're kind of tethered to saying certain things because you're dependent on your audience liking what you say.
100%.
Where we are, we can kind of just say whatever we want, and it doesn't matter.
It's a huge advantage for both you and I. Me, because I don't have to work, and you, because you have your really good income day job. It's like, or night job. I don't know if you work a lot. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a really important factor. And the ironic part about it is, I think that the reason we've both been successful in this is because we do tell the truth, and we don't care if it rubs our audience the wrong way. Obviously I get pushback from my audience sometimes on different things, and I appreciate it for the most part. And, certain ideological people will just abandon me because, they're like Trump supporters or whatever, and I'll talk shit about him or whatever. You're going to lose people along the way, but as you go, you basically find an audience that is deep thinking and critical thinking and willing to hear ideas that they don't necessarily agree with. And I think that's really important, because I don't want an echo chamber. Like, as much as Twitter is one, I like having differences of opinion with people, and I like having disputes and debates and conversations. So if my audience can be that way too, that's ideal. And because we don't have the financial need of our shows, it's like, well, then yeah, this is what it's going to create. And because of that, I think that the shows get bigger and bigger because it appeals to more people, because we are telling the truth, and that's something that's sorely lacking in all media right now. Yeah.
So there's obviously the desire to not create an echo chamber, but then there are some people that they're actually there to argue with you about ideas. They're just there to be parasites, and like suck the lifeblood out of what you're trying to do. Those people suck, and you have to block them. And that's been an interesting thing for me, and I know for you over this year, like figuring out like what that balance is, like what type of person who's a healthy critic who's telling you suck, and you're kind of like, okay, yeah, you've got a point, versus like these bottom feeding gnats. So what's that been like for you, trying to figure out that balance?
It's very hard. Yeah, I think that's the thing that I've found most challenging about kind of rising too fast, because I really have blown up like in a very short period of time. Same for you. And it's just like, I expected some people not to like me, of course. Like, no, there's no way everyone's going to like you. Like, I'm totally accustomed to that. I did not expect people to hate me for things that weren't real. I think that's the thing that's the most perplexing. I could go through the list of accusations. I'll leave some of them off because I don't want to start any fucking bullshit rumor mill stuff. But some people think that I'm a federal agent because I don't have to work, and they're like, it's impossible. Why would he? Oh, he's retired and he talks about the government. Like, was he fucking crazy? Yeah, I am. I'm a little crazy, and that's why I do it. And then I've also got oh God, how many other things? Oh, I never ran a mortgage company. It's like, dude, do you think I could talk about this stuff how I do if I didn't do that? Like, that's so crazy to me. And then other accusations that are just off the wall bizarre. So, like you said, I don't mind genuine criticism or preferably constructive criticism. What blows my mind is people creating narratives and then running with them about me and like having it be a thing that gets back to me through other people. And I'm like, what the fuck? And that's happened to me a bunch of times over the past year. And all I've done is try and be as honest and as good of a person as possible in this scene. And I've tried to like uplift people. I've tried to be, just good. I've really tried to be good. Like I'm doing this out of the passion of my heart. Like it's not, there is no financial motive here. Oh, that's the other thing, the clout chasing, and this is for money, which is fucking bizarre because I know you and I both hardly make anything from this stuff. So the fact that people have such a misconception about the gravy train that is medium tier libertarian podcasting is just hysterical.
Yeah, it's I don't know, like it is cool to, like go places and have people know who you are, but most of the time this isn't like some paparazzi gig. Like, I mean, I've only met one person outside of a Liberty event who knew who I was, and that was weird. It was at a Komatsu dealership. Some truck driver who watches my show happened to me. But like, yeah, people think that they think this is way more than it actually is. Like that the fame is way bigger and that the monetary gain is way bigger. It's like if you are clout chasing for this, you have no life. Like if this is like your goal to like rise up and make money and get fame here, like it's pretty sad. Like it's pretty fucking easy. I mean, it doesn't take much to become a name and to make a difference in this circle. So,
well, I'll disagree with you a little bit. I do think it takes a decent amount to get any sort of notoriety, and we've both been fortunate with that, with networking and things like that, and having our different vantage point that for whatever reason appealed to people. Because there are a lot of people that have shows out there that struggle mightily to get name recognition, and I feel for them. And I think a lot of the animus that you and I get is from people that have been doing it for a long time, and they feel like, well, why the fuck are these guys doing well? And I don't blame them for feeling that way, but at the same time, like, don't be mad at me, like do better. I mean, or get a different lane or do something. I mean, just mix it up. And it's just bizarre to me that people are like, you've only been doing your show for a year and a half, and you're like top 5 in the Liberty sphere. It's like, yeah, sorry. I mean, I just really, I'm very passionate about what I do, and that appeals to some people. Forgive me, and I'm not going to stop. So that's the other thing is like my will with this is fucking infinite. Like you will not break me with rumor mill nonsense. You will not break me with hating me. Like I care about this stuff, and it's real to me. So I'm going to be here. Get used to it.
So have you been surprised that you've filled a lane that you didn't necessarily think you were going to? So I have, like, I never thought I'd be into this, like, Epstein 9/11, like Ryan Dawson stuff. I figured I'd probably have him on the show or whatever, but that's become like a big part of what I do now. And if you had told me that last year when I started, I would have been like, what? Like, no way. So I was wondering, is there anything you've been drawn into that kind of surprised you that's become part of your shtick? Uh-oh, looks like we lost.
Yeah,
Clint.
I think I definitely talk more about shit.
Oh, you're back. You're just a little laggy. So
okay, sorry, man. Yeah, I think that the biggest surprise to me is that I've been in more of a conspiracy theorist lane than I expected to be. I didn't really consider myself a serious conspiracy theorist prior, but there's just been so many conspiracies that have happened over the past couple of years that like forced to talk about it. And I'm more interested in talking to people that are at least open to considering, bigger scope ideas as to what's happening to us and why and who's behind it. And I think that that's probably the lane that I'm surprised most about. I've had some really, really smart people that would probably be considered conspiracy theorists on. I mean, I think James Lindsay is to a certain extent a conspiracy theorist, but he's also, fucking unbelievably smart and well researched, and his shit is like rock solid truth, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's unique. And then, obviously, just having the relationship that you and I have with Dave now, given that I was like seriously his biggest fan, is bizarre. The fact that I really consider him a friend now. So those are the two things that surprised me most by far.
Yeah. So let's move away from talking about our podcasting success and just talking about like the state of the country. So right about a year ago, like to the day almost right now, is when I took my biggest black pill when Congress passed that COVID relief bill without reading it, that sent hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign countries, corporations, all this stuff. And I was just in a feeling of despair. I reposted a video to Twitter that I did a year ago, 2 days before Christmas, and I just had no hope. I'd just been completely, I'd just been stabbed in the back, and I just felt like, what's the point? Why do anything? And my mindset has kind of shifted now, because at that point I was still trying to envision us as a country and trying to see us like come back together and stop being so divided and everything. And I think throughout the beginning of 2021 with January 6th and everything that happened after that, I just started thinking differently. Like, okay, you know what? I don't really care if this country actually remains a single state. I don't really care if people get along. I just want the government to fall apart, and I want people to start resisting, and I want like small pockets of nullification to pop up. And then that actually started happening a lot this year in a lot of different ways, whether it was resistance to vaccine mandates, resistance to gun laws. So I feel a lot better right now on December 21st, 2021 than I did on December 21st, 2020. And it's not just from like doing the podcasting thing. It's from actually seeing what's happened in this country over the last year. And I was wondering if you shared that sentiment or if you think it's worse.
I think it's both, actually. I better because it's worse. And this is actually your theory from about a year ago, where you were like, I hope Biden wins. And you, I mean, to a certain extent, I think you were right. It's like, it made it a lot worse. And because it got so much worse, it started to push the country towards secession, or virtual secession, ideological secession, media secession. It's like all of this stuff is coming to pass. And I think that I had a similar outlook to you, where it's like I wasn't really interested or thinking that the dissolution of the United States was a possibility 2 years ago. Like, I didn't think that. I certainly didn't think it would happen in like the near term or my lifetime. So yeah, that's probably been my biggest evolution, is that now not only do I think, not only did I go from not really thinking it was possible nor really wanting it, to wanting it but not thinking it's possible, to really, really wanting it and then thinking it's possible, and then seeing it kind of start to happen simultaneously. It's such dire financial economic straits. It's so dangerous what they've done in terms of printing and borrowing. Everyone is basically a belief theory at this point. And as an Austrian economic guy, like, I just know in my soul that they're wrong, and that this is going to be catastrophic. And the vast majority of people are not even close to prepared for it. So people like you and I, and those that are in our realm, that are kind of preparing economically to weather whatever may come. But I'm simultaneously very concerned about societal collapse and what will happen to the people that aren't prepared for it, because I think that you don't transition from the United States and the biggest government in all of human history to a glide path scenario. Like, it ain't going to happen. So there's going to be real tumult for us all to deal with.
Yeah. So, as libertarians, we always are worrying about the state of our own country and thinking the government is going to fall apart or that the currency is going to collapse. But it's been such a worldwide catastrophe. The question I have is who is really poised to become the next economic leader? I mean, it's not really China. I mean, China's economy is kind of a paper tiger, but I was wondering, do you think that another country is going to be the next have the next world reserve currency and then they're going to overtake the United States? Or do you think like everything is in such a state of tumult that it's too hard to tell? Like how do you see this playing out?
I really don't know. I mean, there are so many variables that go into this. Basically, any central bank that decides that is in the position that they can have fiscal sanity could be that nation. Like they could, but they also have to have an industry that competes with ours, and most of them don't. So I'm not sure. Economically, in terms of like governmental budgets, Russia sits really pretty. They have almost no debt. Their economy sucks, so that's like it doesn't suck. It just doesn't produce much. So that's the only reason I don't think that they would be the front runner for it. But if it were strictly based off a balance sheet for the nation, I think Russia is fucking in an unbelievably beneficial position. So what I envision, or what I'm concerned with, kind of my worst case scenario, is that Russia and China team up, and it's not impossible. I mean, the way we're treating both of these countries, we're kind of pushing them into being bedfellows, and I think it's a very dangerous game to play. It's two nuclear powers, one that's deeply indebted but has a major capacity for production, and the other that's financially solvent but doesn't have a tremendous amount of production. Like you put those two together, you might have something. So yeah, like we need to stop. I mean, we really need to stop pushing these people. If they want Taiwan, back off and let them have it. Like we've got to stop being the bully on the block. If Russia wants Ukraine, back the fuck off, let them have it. It's just insane that we're still trying to police the world while we are teetering on, the brink of economic destruction. It's really crazy, and we're already having inflation even before we have, a full military buildup that could go towards a world war like that. And there's also, in terms of morale in this country, good fucking luck getting enough people in America to fight for this country at this point. No one even dyed in the wool, red, white, and blue bleeding motherfuckers are like, I don't want to die for this country right now. Like it doesn't share my values. It treats me like an enemy. And I don't blame them. So I don't think on any front we're prepared for this. And then you also have the vaccine passports that are mandates that are making it so that thousands of military enlisted are basically resigning or being fired, or however you want to phrase it. So yeah, dude, no wars, please.
Yeah, it's incredible to me that that's actually a discussion. Like, should we go to war with Russia or China? Like, that's becoming a conversation now. And to me, like, you've seen me on Twitter, I'm like, it's not whether we should go to war with China or Russia. It's that we should stop fighting Israel and Saudi Arabia's wars for them. Like, that's the number one thing we should do. I mean, like, I can't imagine after, especially like the last 20, 30 years, thinking that going to war is going to be economically advantageous for us. The Russians failed at it, and then they let us have our go at it, and it fucked us up. So like, I can't believe that people still think this. Like, if you want China to fail, then let it invade Taiwan and let it do its fucking reckless shit. Why do we care? Like, right. It's just absolutely insane to me. And I mean, this is what's so disappointing about the right wing is with China. Like, there's still such hawks on it. I mean, they've gotten better with some of the wars in the Middle East, but they really want to go to war with China. It's just like, are you insane? And then the left with Russia, like, I just can't believe it. It just like completely blows my mind, man.
I'm with you. I mean, as I've said, like, I don't think we can win that war, especially because it's not going to just be us versus China. Like, if people think that, I think they're deluded. It's it'll be partitioning off. I mean, obviously it's going to be proxy wars that lead into an outright hot conflict if it were to ever come to pass. But if it comes to pass, you're having the two biggest economic powers go at it. And I mean, from the other side of the planet. Like there's going to be nations that ally with us, and there's going to be nations that ally with China. So it's going to be like instant World War III if it goes that route. And I think that it's incumbent upon anybody that lives in America to regardless of your feeling about China. I don't like their ruler awful, and the fact that they likely played a role in COVID. Let's leave it at that. I'm not a fan, loudly, and what they've done to Hong Kong is terrible, and what they might do to Taiwan would be terrible. All of it is set aside. We cannot do it. So fucking get the idea out of your head. It's like it's an option, okay? They're a nuclear power. No. So that's my vantage point on it. Just like and to your point about neocons, like I have sympathy for them because I share some of the animus towards China for what happened. But ultimately, like the reason we were locked down isn't because of China. So like even if you think that China played a role with the virus, it's still they didn't lock us down. Our government did that. So I ain't gonna fight for them.
Yeah, and if China played a role with the virus, the U.S. government played a role with China with the virus. So it's not like it absolves us from any sort of involvement there. So that's kind of interesting too.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah, I don't know. I just hope that sentiment finally breaks, but I don't know what it's going to take. People just they just kind of fall back on that. But as far as the United States goes with the dollar, so this is, I mean, we're like locked into this. We're locked into this whirlpool of insanity where we have a warfare state that uses imaginary money to keep itself going. But the warfare state is what keeps the imaginary money valuable. So in other words, like fighting Saudi Arabia's wars kind of keeps us on the petrodollar, which allows us to run these trade deficits and, keep our economic status in the world. And, also our military might around the world in general, not just with our alliance with Saudi Arabia, but, we just like keep driving people into debt purposefully, whether it's in house loans or college loans or whatever. We force people to join the military so they don't have to pay for school. I mean, we're just like so deeply entrenched in this. Do you think there's any way to break out of it without just a collapse, or is it just going to have to all come crashing down at this point?
I mean, I think that the only reason we haven't collapsed already is because every other central bank across the world is doing the same thing. So
Right.
Let's start there. Like people always say, "Oh, you're wrong because we haven't collapsed," and it's like, well, no, we haven't collapsed because everybody else is just as stupid as us or stupider. Right. I still believe that $300 trillion in debt globally is going to be a problem. Call me crazy. I think that's a fucking problem, and I take it seriously. So as far as like, can we get out of this system without there being a collapse? I don't think so. I don't think you can unwind that debt. I mean, you could do debt jubilees, but that would bankrupt the nations that own our debt. It would bankrupt the pensioners that hold the debt. It would bankrupt, basically every creditor would be bankrupted. And who runs the credit system? Well, I'm not going to go down the conspiracy route, but it's a lot of old money, and it's people with ties to the levers of power. And why would they let that go that route? So I don't think they're going to let it go that route. I think that they're going to have to a central bank digital currency and transition to it. I think that's really the only path that they have. And they talk about it openly. So it's not conspiracy theory stuff. Like, they are talking about central bank digital currencies for multiple countries across the planet. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. I don't think you can do that without severe economic pain. And you can't just go like, oh, you've got $1,000 in your bank. We're going to give you 500 CBDC USDs or whatever they're going to call them, and have the same purchasing power. Like, you still have supply and demand, and you have to have price realization, and that is going to be dependent on how they handle that transition. And I think in that period, they're going to try and implement MMT fully, where they actually put money into people's accounts, and they're going to have, I really think that they're going to try for social credit scores a la China, where they are able to cut political dissidents, people like us, off from the financial system. And if it's digital, can do it very easily. And I think that's exactly what all of this is about. I think that the World Economic Forum and the Build Back Better and every major Western politician, that phrase is not a coincidence and it's not an accident. And I think it's real. And I don't know why I talk about this. I still feel awkward when I'm really confident that this is the truth, but I still feel weird because it's just not an acceptable opinion to say it out loud. But it's my belief. So that's what I'm preparing for. I think that those that don't want to be sucked into the system and be a slave of it, it's incumbent upon all of us to get out of it. And if you think Bitcoin is that path, great. If you think precious metal is that path, great. If you think migrating to a different country is a path, fine. We just gotta be in front of this thing because it's going to be tough.
So do you think it's destined to fail? I mean, because that's the thing with anytime they try to centrally plan an economy, it eventually falls apart and usually doesn't even really take that long. I mean, the Soviet Union didn't last very long. A lot of fascist countries don't last very long. That's just not just economic stuff. That's also, crushing of civil liberties and things like that. But I feel like some people think this is inevitable and that this is going to become the way things are and it's going to stay that way. And I just by looking at history and looking at the natural world, I'm still way against it forming, obviously, but I think if things go in this direction, it's just not going to work and it's not going to last. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's going to be dependent on how well they can handle the transition from, regular fiat to digital fiat. I don't know, man. It's never been done. They haven't ever done this. And the fact that they're doing it on a global scale is what gives me concern that they could be successful. Because in the past, when you had those collapses, it was it benefited other countries. So they allowed it to happen. They're not going to step in. They're not going to do the same dumb shit to allow it to benefit that nation versus themselves. So this time, they all seem to be kind of walking in lockstep. And that gives me real pause. The fact that it's happening on a global scale and it's uniform and it's all nuts makes me get real conspiratorial because it just doesn't add up. And because if I was one of these countries, I'd be no, I'm gonna be fiscally sound. I'd do what Russia's doing, but I would obviously decrease tyranny and I would get my too. But the fact that almost every country is doing the same thing, it just makes me feel like they all have an end game in mind, and that is a transition to digital currency, but fiat digital currency. And I don't believe in government, and I don't think they're capable of this stuff at this point. My faith in the people and their desire for freedom is also kind of at an all-time. I don't know who wins out. I mean, obviously, depending on what day I wake up, sometimes I go, okay, yeah, the people are waking up, they're being red-pilled, they understand, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, we're, at 9 weeks now. At some point, people have, it's supposed to be one jab, and it was doing this 5, now it's okay, yeah, you're going to wake up at some point, right? And still, it seems 40-50% of the people are just no, I'm just going to do whatever they say. So I don't know, man. What do you think? You really think it's gonna just fall apart?
Well, I think it might take some sort of form, so that's why I'm against it, trying to get out ahead of it like you are. I just don't think it's inevitable for. I think that there's a religious aspect to thinking that this is the way it's going to become, and that it's never going to change because it's kind of like an end times type deal. This is very reminiscent of
sure
the Antichrist and the mark of the beast and all that type of stuff. So I think a lot of people think that it's just inevitable and it's going to end, and things are going to be like that until the world ends. And I just don't think that way. I mean, I think you're right, it is new territory because of the digital aspect of it, but we've had, there's so many, from a religious perspective, there's so many times throughout history where you could have thought, wow, this is it. This is the end. This is how it's going to go. I don't know. I just think I trust in the natural world a little bit more than most people do, that it'll just cause this to fall apart eventually. Because regardless of how many controls you're trying to use, I don't think like once you're bringing things to such a large scale, especially a global scale, and like different countries, different cultures, different people, different economic structures, and trying to put them all under one umbrella, I just don't think it will work. Like I think it'll fall apart in a couple. I mean, I don't know, in a decade. Like I can't see it lasting longer than that.
Am I back?
There you go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so if you're I agree with you. Obviously, I don't think that they're going to have a one world government forever. Like, I think that's totally impossible because you'll have revolutions, people will rise up. Like that's through it with being really bloody and bad. And that's that transition through there. You may have lost me again.
I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, that's the I can hear you. That's the big question to me, man. I think that long term, as I've said many times, I'm very hopeful, and I think that even if it gets really bad, even on a global scale, there's still going to be enclaves where it's not so bad. I mean, like a perfect example of what you were talking about is like during World War II, if you were in one of the countries being bombed every day, you felt like it was the end of the world. But there's a lot of countries that were totally peaceful during World War II, and there was nothing going on. So I think that's where I'll try and be.
Yeah. So where do you think that is? Like what what countries are not going to be heavily affected by this? Like what's a safe haven, you think?
I mean, a lot of people think Mexico for some reason. I don't agree with that. I went there and there's just so much corruption in the government. I just don't think it's possible that they would be capable of weathering that storm. I think you're going to
I think we lost Clint. Clint's been having internet issues, so we'll see if he shows up here again. Let's see.
Google version.
Kick from studio, kick guest. There we go. You're back.
Sorry, what were we talking about, man? Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. We were talking about
where to go.
Yeah, where should we go?
I mean, honestly, I think that it's really important that you be around people that value liberty, like wherever that is, because it's going to come down to is the cost benefit analysis for the government of messing with your community worthwhile? And I think that if you're around a bunch of liberty loving psychopaths, you have a really good chance of the government looking at you and going like, we're going to leave them alone. Especially with all of the potential for global conflict as this unwinds. I think that they'll have way too many, pans on the stovetop to really worry about, like the little New Hampshire enclave or whatever. So that's what I'm looking for, is just a community of people that share similar values and are willing to, fight for what they believe in. And hopefully that means that we won't have to fight for what we believe in. So I think that's as good as you're going to do. Where that is kind of TBD. There's going to be a lot of countries that have decent lifestyles and freedom-oriented ways of life, but it's just I honestly don't think we can know with certainty at this point which it'll be.
Yeah, it seems to me that the jackboot approach to government is always going to backfire. Like if you're stomping on people and restricting their freedom and movement and happiness, really if you like take away their comfort, that's when they'll revolt. So if you can figure out how to keep them comfortable and take away their freedoms and, spy on them and get them to do what you want them to do, then you've got it made. But it seems like they're kind of screwing that up. Like they did that, ironically, they sort of did that sort of well in 2020, because what they did is they scared the shit out of all of us. And then they were like, okay, well, they didn't even really have to mandate lockdowns in a lot of places. People were just doing it voluntarily. And then they were like, okay, we'll give you this stimulus money. And, after a while it wore off. But initially, like, that was a pretty good play. But now it's like they're building concentration camps in other countries, and they're, trying to force everyone to get vaccines when they don't want them. So like we've kind of reached a point where they're just going the opposite way, and you're seeing like a ton more backlash. I mean, some of it's probably also because people are fed up, but I think a lot of it is just how blatant it's been and how scary it is. And like, you're looking around the world, seeing what's going on. That's what gives me hope, is like the governments all around the world, they've run out of being clever. They're at the point where they're just being like blatantly authoritarian. And like Australia, I think you're going to have a revolt there eventually. Like, I don't think you can do that forever and get away with it.
Well, especially because they're still armed. I mean, the obvious rejoinder to your point is North Korea, where the people weren't armed and they have suffered terribly forever because of it.
Right.
And that's really the only counter example I can present you, where like the boot was firmly on the neck and brutally so, and it persisted. But other than that, you're absolutely right. I mean, as long as you have an armed population, they can't do it. I mean, they just flat out can't, because if the economic strain gets so significant and people start to miss meals, you're going to have people that pick up arms at some point. Like, it's just inevitable. So I think that America in particular, like, it's going to, unless they disarm us, which I don't think they'll ever be able to do, that's the only way that you could have a truly totalitarian nation. Like, you could still have totalitarian states in America. Like, that's definitely a possibility. Like, New York is ripe for it because they've disarmed those people to a large extent. But most of the states, they're gun-toting, Bible-thumping folks, and they ain't gonna have it. At some point, they ain't gonna have it. So, I'm optimistic in that sense. It's just like, I just want my life back, man. I don't even want to go down this path. So like, yeah, I'm optimistic, but what I'm describing is like the fucking fall of the United States and a lot of economic turmoil and a lot of people missing paychecks and meals and a lot of craziness. That, I mean, we have lived through probably the greatest time to be alive in human history, and you still had people that were willing to light stuff on fire and freak out last summer. And if it can get that bad when people are still eating, like, if you ever see America missing meals, look out. Like, it would be crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, this kind of harkens back to what you brought up, my hypothesis from last year, that if Biden won, we'd actually be in a better place because we'd be in a worse place. I remember back in 2018, 2019, I was telling people that we were living in a financial bubble and things were going to get bad. And, we were actually murdering a lot of innocent people in Yemen and, the war in Syria back that far, what a disaster that was. And no one gave a shit about anything. Like, it was just me, my life, everything's good. Fuck it. I don't care about anything else. Like, people are forced to care about things now, because it does involve them at this point. And they've been forced to look at the system and realize what's going on. I've had so many friends who've been red pilled on so much stuff. Like, I've hooked a lot of my like BoomerCon right-wing friends onto my show. And, they like saw the Maria Farmer episode that Donald Trump was going to Epstein's place. And, seeing like the foreign policy connections with Israel and Saudi Arabia and, like drone bombing. I don't know, just like they're seeing all of it, and it's incredible. So like, I'm almost glad that this is happening in a sort of demented way. Like, another thing is like teaching critical race theory in schools. Like, I'm almost glad that's happening, because now you're seeing people like get their kids out of public schools and like realize that the whole system is fucked. So
Well,
Is
and,
there
and
any
masking the kids too. That expedited that process.
Yeah, so like in some ways, I'm actually kind of glad we've been going through this hellhole of a dystopian nightmare for the last year and a half, because it has forced people out of their bubble. And the ones who haven't been forced out, like, let's be real, they weren't any better a year and a half ago. Like, they might have not as been as aggressive as they are now trying to control us, but they were never like good on this stuff. They never cared about any of this stuff. But now you have like, you got to have like millions more people now who
millions guaranteed. Reed is
Yeah.
millions and millions of people hate the government now. That is progress. That is huge progress. I don't know how to say it any other way. Like, perfect example, for Christmas, I sent to my brother, mom, and stepdad Anatomy of the State because I knew they were ready for it. You know, I didn't waste my time sending it to them 10 years ago. They would have been like, I'll sit that over on the nightstand and never read it. They're ready for it now. These people are radicalized to hate local government in particular, and the federal government moreover, because they're in blue states. And they realize, like, it's not enough to just go about your life anymore. Like, you can't go about your life anymore. So you're right. I mean, and the good news is like, your life was still okay. You know, it wasn't like complete misery, but it was enough of an infringement in your day-to-day activities and your preferences on what you want to do with your life that people were like, what the fuck's happening? You know, like this is a real issue now. And you're right also that when it came to military intervention overseas, you couldn't get them to, you know, even lift an eyebrow at it for the most part. But it's them now, and it's their family, and it's their kids, and it's their lineage, and it's their heritage as a nation and as freedom-minded people. Like, it's all on your doorstep, folks. Like, and yeah, I can't help but be a little bit appreciative of all of the people that have been woken up to it. And then the thing we haven't mentioned is the immense distrust that it's bred in the media. I mean, people didn't like the media prior. They despise these people now, and they don't trust a fucking thing they have to say. So that to me is very hopeful, because it means that they're going to be really hard to propagandize moving forward. Now, there's another half of the country that's probably even easier to propagandize because they have set all rational thinking aside, and those people are very dangerous. The other half of the country that aren't going to buy into propaganda very easily anymore, those are allies, and we need to be with those people. And those are the people that can, you know, make us a force that can't be stomped down or have the boot on our neck, as you described it.
Yeah. And I think the delineation there, like the half that's with us and the half that isn't, it's not 100% right and left. Like, there are, I think the right is more open to that kind of thinking right now. Like, the cultural right is not as dismissive of skepticism as the cultural left is right now. But like, if you talk to actual like left-wing people, most of them admit, like, yeah, this is fucking retarded. This sucks. Like, this, you know, these vaccine mandates are ridiculous. This lockdown shit, like, it's stupid. I mean, I have family members who are both right and left, and some of the right-wing people are freaked out about this still and still want, you know, everyone to be wearing a mask all the time. And then some of the left-wing people in my family are like, this is stupid. Like, why are we still doing this? So it's like, I don't know. There's a strain of like independent thought that exists in this country, and just anyone who's like willing to latch onto that is an ally. Like, regardless of whether they're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, not political, whatever. Like, anyone who, you know, has been burned by the media or the government or, you know, whatever entity, they are ripe for the picking. And there are a lot of like people on the left who have been burned by the government and the media. Like, I mean, it's amazing, like, the Bernie supporters you can find who got radicalized by him getting stabbed in the back and then him like endorsing Hillary or endorsing Biden. And then that radicalized them and turned them into government hating anarchists. Like, it does happen. Right. It's crazy, like, seeing where you can find those pockets of people who think that way.
And it's really good for us that it's happened, because now they're not going to be so interested in having that all-powerful government that they have deified in the past, because they now know it can be wielded in a way that they don't appreciate. and that was a revelatory experience for many of them, especially the bodily autonomy left, the people that do not believe in either if they're anti-vax or if they just don't want it to be mandated. Like those are all people that I think are allies now, and that's good. Also, to your point about it not being left or right, I completely agree. I mean, as you said, I also think it's more right wingers that are thinking critically right now. But all I'm looking for is critical thinkers, and that's the real division. It's like critical thinkers versus sheep. Like that. That's really all there is left. And fortunately, if you look at Biden's approval ratings, it looks like critical thinkers are probably the majority right now. But it's a slim majority. He is hated, but just because some of those people are saying, yes, I hate Joe Biden, doesn't mean that they're thinking critically. They just go, well, if we get a Republican in there, we can punish the left and we can get our freedom back. And it's like, no. Like if you're still looking at political solutions, and this is probably the biggest issue I have with my relatives that have been red pilled, but not enough. They still look at, like, all of my relatives that are in California that are conservative leaning were like, Gavin Newsom's gonna be recalled. There's no way that he doesn't get recalled. And right. I was like, well, he not only did he not get recalled, but he got 67%, no, or whatever it was, to keep him in office. So yeah, they are now realizing that that hope probably shouldn't be put in the political sphere. But unfortunately, it's going to take a little while. It's going to take some time for people to really give up on reform and start to realize that, like, peaceful revolution and secession is probably the only way out. But more and more people are seeing it, and just like with the Ron Paul movement, it's like if someone is able to take that first step, you have no idea where they'll be in a decade. So I'm not going to downplay or denigrate any of those people just because they aren't where you and I are ideologically. Like, I am proud of them for taking a step off of the path of pure sheepdom and listening to whatever the government has to say or the media has to say. Like, these people are taking a brave first step out into liberty-minded thought. So encourage them. Don't talk shit to them. I hate it when I see libertarians do that to people. They're like these people are just like coming out of statism into some thought about anarchy, and people are like, you're not pure and you're suck and you're worthless. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, these people are so much better than 90% of the people out there, and people still want to just prove how much further along they are in this evolution of thought. I mean, I'm still gonna keep evolving on my thought too. So, like, just stop thinking that you're so far above people because you've read a little bit more Rothbard. Like, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. One place I disagree with some, like, right-wing populists who would, call themselves libertarian or libertarian leaning or whatever is, instead of, like, telling the blatant truth, they think that we should be kind of hijacking some of their cultural values or their the way they see Donald Trump or something, like, use that to an advantage. And, especially when Donald Trump the other day said that thing about the vaccines, like, this would have been the Spanish flu 2.0, we've saved hundreds of millions of lives, blah, blah, blah. And, like, you saw right wingers getting so pissed and like, fuck this guy. And, like a year ago when he ended up signing this COVID relief bill, like, moments like that, and not just with him, but like with Bernie, the same thing. Like, when you see him stab his supporters in the back, or like Tulsi when she ran this super anti-establishment campaign and then ends up endorsing Biden. Like, I think all of those things are way better than, like, trying to hijack some sort of false idea that the right or left has. Like, when they have those moments of truth where they see, like, holy shit, like, this guy doesn't actually give a fuck about me, or this guy is not my friend. Like, those are the moments I live for. So I understand, like, why populists try to use the right or left or whatever. But, like, for me, it's really just the, seeing your hero stab you in the back and then realizing, wow, this system does not work for me. And I think the last year and a half has been so ripe for that. You've seen that on so many levels, and people are, like, seeing it everywhere, and they're like, fuck this, like, and then they'll look for something else. And that's where you can really where you can reach them and show them the way. But what do you think about that? Have you noticed that too? Or
Of course. I mean, I think back to your prior point about, a perfect example of people that are not reachable that are on the right are the people that were arrested for January 6th and are still Trump supporters, even though he didn't lift a fucking finger to help those people.
Right.
I mean, those people cannot be reached. Like, you were put in prison. You're a political prisoner, and Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck, and you're still like MAGA 2024. Like, what? I mean, those people are just as crazy as the people on the left. But your point about populism and I really think it's like, the way I view it is, it still is faith in reform. It's still a faith in a capacity to reform the existing system. When they talk about utilizing the MAGA movement and things like that, like, I'm interested in reaching those people, but I'm not really interested in utilizing them for political means. I just don't think, like, my point would be that I don't really want to see a liberty-minded person get in there, because I don't think that they can save this system. And if we try liberty from a presidential federal level, and we're basically have a terrible economic collapse under it, you're gonna have people clamoring for communism.
Can you imagine the interest rate hikes we'd have to have if we were having like a libertarian president?
Exactly right. So, like, I would almost prefer that the collapse, because I believe it's inevitable, I would prefer the collapse come under a statist and a hard one, and preferably a hard left one, because those are the people that scare me the most. But honestly, like, there's real problems with right-wing populism too that people don't like to talk about. But it's scary shit. I don't really want any sort of totalitarian mindset to be something that I utilize for self-defense. My principles ultimately my principle is to survive, and I will do whatever necessary to do so for the most part. But I don't want to use populism and punish the left in a way that's so merciless, just because they treated me poorly. And I know this sounds kind of like a religious turn the other cheek thing, and I'm not really normally that way, especially when people come at me online. I'm pretty vicious. But I think that when it comes to global politics, or at least national politics, it's very important that when you regain power, if you want to cool things down, if you don't want to end up in civil war, you cannot continue to escalate things. People on the right that I like a lot, they talk about, do everything that the left has done to us, but do it harder. That's their belief. And they think that the reason the right loses is because the right, when it gets power, doesn't punish its enemies like the left does. I disagree with that. And I know that a lot of people will find that unpopular. And I understand the human instinct to want to punish people. I very much want to punish Fauci and all these other fuckers that ruined my life for 2 years. But I don't think that it gets you to a peaceful place. It only begets more escalation, and it begets the potential for very, very dangerous conflict. And unless you're ready for that, be very careful about escalating just because you think that the left deserves it.
Yeah. I remember when, last November, I was thinking, if I were Donald Trump, I would really want to lose because next year is going to suck as far as, from a presidential standpoint. And sure enough, I mean, Biden didn't help it, but a lot of it was inevitable. So I was like, I would not want to be president the next 4 years. I'd be getting the blame for everything. So what is going to be what are you going to try to insert into the conversation for the future? So, like, obviously the lockdowns was what you really capitalized, or what you really talked about a lot. That's what you named your show and everything. What going forward are you going to try to insert into the conversation and steer in a direction that you don't necessarily see anybody else doing?
I don't know that I have a lane picked out or anything. I basically am just reactionary to the tyranny that I'm experiencing at this point, because it's so significant. I don't really have any time for extracurricular activity. It's like, I just got to focus on this stuff that's happening right in front of me. But what I would like to see is, I would like to see us capitalize on this moment, not on the LP scale, but on the ideological, reaching people's hearts and minds scale of, it's not enough to just get our freedom back from 2019 if we are fortunate enough to get it back. What we have to do is continue back towards 1912, or whatever year you like, because autists will get upset with me for not picking the perfect year. So yeah, that's what I would like. Is I would like to see us go from a belief in MMT and statism and militarism or militarism to one of very very small government and trying to get as much of our personal freedom and autonomy and liberty and whatever you want to call it back. And that's my goal. I would like to leave my kids, if I have some, a better planet. And at this point I have existed through a real significant decline in human liberty on Earth. So it sounds very kind of diluted to think that I would play any role in that, but that's what I want to see. So I'm gonna give some effort towards it. Like I would definitely. I don't want it to just be like, okay, we got them to stop with the vaccine passports and social credit and lockdowns, and now let's chill. We got to go further.
Yeah, we got a super chat here. In your opinions, would the Liberty Movement support a general strike as a means for pushing a peaceful revolution? So I don't know what you think about this, but there are a lot of people calling for a trucker strike, and I don't really see that as too much different than sanctions, because I was like, if you stop running trucks to the cities, does that hurt the government or does that hurt the people in the city? Like, in my opinion, the only thing that's going to happen is the people in the city are going to starve and the government's going to be fine. And if anything, it actually gives the government a catalyst to grab more control, say like, look, this private sector trucking industry, we can't have this. We need to actually have more regulation over trucking. I don't know. That's my thoughts on that in general, but what do you think?
I think if it's, as he said, a general strike, if it's big enough, then the government can't do it. They can't nationalize every industry. I don't think they could even nationalize the trucking industry. Just that single industry alone, there would be such terrible economic pain from it that I think that it would probably wake a lot of people up to like, okay, we can't do this to these people. Like, they're not going to fucking play this game, and we need them. So I'm actually more optimistic on general strikes than probably a lot of people in the libertarian sphere are, in that I think that people need to feel the pain. They need to understand that, like, this is not acceptable, and we will make your life as hellish as you've made ours. And again, I don't say that lightly, because as I've just said, I don't really want to take a, retribution type stance for all this stuff. But if they continue down this path, the alternative is totalitarianism. So would I be willing to sacrifice some of my principles in the near term to prevent that? Sure. I would punish cities and stop delivering goods to the cities to make the people rise up against the local government that's locking them down. Like, yeah, I think, and your point about it being like, trade embargoes, it's an interesting analogy and something I hadn't thought of. But I do think it's different in that, we have all of the materials here, and these are our people. It's not a foreign power. So it doesn't galvanize the people in that country against the foreign power. Now, it might galvanize them against their fellow Americans that have different ideologies, and it could escalate it towards a civil war, or it could get them to relent. So it's a gamble, and I do that knowingly. I get it. So yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming back on the show. It's always good to have you. What do you got coming up? You got any big interviews, or going to any events, or you just taking it easy?
Yeah, I'm just taking it easy through the holidays, man. I've been doing some guest appearances. I haven't done an episode a week, and I'm just kind of chilling through the holidays. I'll probably do one episode before the year's out, and then obviously Dave Smith said he would come back on in January, so people can look forward to that one. If anyone wants to follow me, go to @LibertyLockPod on Twitter, and Liberty Lockdown is the show. You can go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all over the place to search for that. And I am Clint Russell. Thank you for having me on, Reed Coverdale. You are a gem of a human being, and I am honored to know you.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be kind of romantic and in the holiday spirit to close out with "Baby, It's Cold Outside," but I've got a little bit of a scratchy throat, so we'll just pass on that.
I appreciate it. I don't have much of a singing voice, either.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Everyone go check him out. I got his links in the description. And I think this is my last show for 2021. That could be wrong. I might do a live stream by myself or something, but I'm pretty booked in my personal life for the next couple weeks. So Yeah, everyone just hang in there. It's been a crazy year. I know a lot of people have had a lot worse year than the two of us have. It's been one of the best years of my life personally, but I know for a lot of people that's not the case. So just take care of each other and take care of yourselves, and stop relying on the government, because they obviously don't give a shit about you.
Yeah. Well, let me also say, despite how great these past 2 years have been for me in terms of this outlet, I have made less money in these past 2 years than I have in my entire adult life. So like, I've suffered with you. Okay. So if that makes people feel any better, like I am with you in this. I feel what you're going through, and I take it seriously. And I think Reed does too. And it's sincere. Like I very much am worried about the people out there that are suffering from all of this bullshit that we're going through. And I scream about it a couple times a week to let people know that's that I'm serious about it. So if you need more of that spirit in your life, check me out.
Yep. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you have a nice hiatus from all the stress and drama and tyranny. Hope you all have a good holiday, and I will see you next year.